Hoosier Surveyor Podcast, brought to you by the Indiana Society of Professional Land Surveyors.
All right, welcome to the Hoosier Surveyor Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Swingley, joined today by Ryan Selby, the producer.
Yep, hello.
And Brian Luce, our executive director.
Greetings.
It's been a little bit since we've met. We completely bypassed summer and are into fall pumpkin spice season for the Starbucks fans out there. What's been going on? You've been busy this summer, huh?
Yeah, the reason why we've delayed a little bit is because I became a new dad, and that took a little more time than I thought it was going to take of my time for this first few months. So we're 5 months in now, and things are starting to settle down a little bit. So
how's fatherhood been so far?
It's been fun. So it's been interesting.
It's life-changing. I mean, in a lot of positive ways and a couple negative ways. But I don't want to say maybe negative is harsh. Different ways.
Yeah.
Different ways.
Yeah. So definitely a different schedule than we had 5 months ago. So.
Yeah. So baby's sleeping through the night now, and
she's sleeping decent. She's been a good baby so far, knock on wood, but she's still waking up once or twice through the night, but mama's breastfeeding, so that doesn't affect dad too much.
Yeah.
So, we're hoping maybe when she starts getting on solid food, we'll sleep a little better.
So you missed your window for Irish twins at 5 months. So
yeah.
Brian, what have you been up to this summer?
Oh, I feel like somewhat similar. I'm not a new dad, but I have a 3-year-old, so I totally can sympathize where Ryan's coming from. My only two things that I always tell people when I get into the parenthood discussion is first off, don't get too excited or too depressed. Everything changes every 2 weeks. Every time I thought she was sleeping through the night, it changed 2 weeks later. And every time I thought I'd never sleep again, it also changed 2 weeks later. But other than that, it's been kind of a fun summer. I say those first couple years, it's fun, but you don't get to do a lot. Now that she's 3, it's a lot more interactive. Both a lot more fun and a lot more exhausting at the same time. So.
I hear that 3s are more the terrible 2s are more like the terrible 3s. So
do not listen to that terrible 2s nonsense. 2s is fine. 3s is when they get old enough to be able to talk back to you and get smart enough to start trying to get clever about stuff. So 3 is. I'm looking forward to 4.
Well, I'm the seasoned veteran on the parenthood front. I've got 4 kids, 18, 16, 10, and 7, I think.
Something like that.
I lose track. There's too many of them.
Because you just had one graduate.
Yeah, so we just got a high school graduate. We spent our summer the whole month of July was centered around the last year of 4-H. So we had our county fair. She has a horse that she shows and does some competition riding, barrels and poles. And then we went to the state fair, and she did really well there as well. So it was kind of a bittersweet moment to end her 10-year 4-H career. But now she's on to hopefully bigger and better things. No college for her this year. She's taking a year off, and she's going to the rodeos. She's riding in the rodeos, but so that's,
she'll figure it out.
I tried to explain her the finances of it. She went to a show the other day, and she placed 9th out of 50 riders, which was pretty good. And I said, well, what did that pay? And she's like, nothing. I said, well, what did it cost you to enter? And just $80. So I'm like, well, you see the economics. This is not a viable career option. So I did have her come over and job shadow at the office one day. So she wanted to be a surveyor, and it was a very emphatic no. So
very eye-opening.
Yeah. So that's kind of been my, summer in a nutshell, is focused on not necessarily getting one out of the house yet, but getting them prepared for adulthood. That's kind of what was the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So we couldn't be further away from each other as far as parenthood goes, but as colleagues, I think we're right in line with each other, and that can kind of segue into some conversation. So we've missed some time this summer, but there's been a lot of activity.
Yeah.
Within ISPLS, we've set, we set our budget. And I can remember in some of those lean years, we would set a budget that was commonly in the red, knowing that we were going to pull money from our investments to just keep things going, keep our mission floating. A few years back, I don't know if some of you remember when we kind of left the downtown Indianapolis office. We moved down to Greenwood. A lot of those things were in money-saving interest. And at that point in time, we made it a goal to be always in the black on our budget, try not to touch our financials, although that does happen from time to time. Mm-hmm. And so we set our budget this year, and there was quite a bit of discussion. When we first started, it was very much in the red, and we did get it into the black. So I think we wanted to talk a little bit about some of those issues that got us back into the black and being a little more fiscally conservative. One of the things I recall, unfortunately, the TrigStar program, we still support it. ISPLS was fitting the bill for the winning teacher and student. I think got $1,000 a piece.
Something like that. I think we'd been budgeting, was it like $2,400 a year or something like that? $2,000 a year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't, that's not been a bad program. It's been a good program for the state, but we've not seen a lot of fruit out of it. I mean, there's maybe one student that I can recall that came from the TrigStar program, but it was, we made a tough decision to push the initiative down to pay for the prize money to the participating chapters, which I believe are
there's only a couple chapters.
Tecumseh chapter and Northwest chapter, I believe. So
it was just not statewide activity with it, and I think that was a lot of the decision there was let's just have the chapters that are involved with it.
And the realities of it are, I mean, our chapters are flush with cash. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say we should treat that as our bank account, as the society without, that's definitely not what I'm saying. But, I talked to Rich Hudson about it after our meeting, and he said his chapter was more than willing to step up and pay that. And he felt really good that we got out of the red because Rich has been there through it all. So he was really happy that we got out of the red and into the black. But there was a couple other things that we did. Do you recall what else we had done to get ourselves out of the red?
One thing we did was every year we were doing a financial review of the finances of the society. And it's a pretty hefty tab for every year. So this year we decided to make that a biannual. So every other year we'll do the financial review. Part of that, probably the main reason behind it, is just that we have so much oversight built into our society between the treasurer with the board, and then from there it goes to Brian Lewis, who usually reviews all of our financing. And then there's one more step at RGI that reviews it also. So we've got 3 checks and balances built into the system already. So we felt like our finances were being watched well enough that if we went every other year, we would be safe with that option. So
Brian, do you have any comments on that? I mean, where do you see that as being an advantage or disadvantage or any kind of concern?
No, I mean, it all varies by the group and the amount of transactions. But as Ryan pointed out, we have a lot of checks and balances in place. And our what we pay out is a small enough number of transactions that's fairly easy for the treasurer and for the board to kind of wrap their head around it. As groups get bigger and more complex, it's more difficult to kind of keep all that straight. And we've got a good number of moving parts, but it isn't so much that I don't think we can keep track of it. And so it does save some money because that kind of stuff is very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you think that we're saving by going to biannual instead of annual?
Oh, 7 or 8,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a significant amount, and definitely funds that can be rerouted to other purposes.
Right. Right. Well, I think it's a good thing. Again, I think it makes a lot of people feel comfortable knowing that, we're not overspending our means. And that's definitely one of the responsibilities of being a board member is to be cognizant of that at all times. So I think we came to the table, we negotiated, we found some options to keep ourselves going good and without dipping into too much investments. And so I'm pretty happy with the results. What else we got going on? Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say from a positive side, I mean, one, we have not dipped into our investments in 8 years. In the last 8 years, we have averaged in the black. We have been in the red only 3 times. One of them was last year, and it was like $240. Like, we were super close. The other 2 years really were planned. One year, we made a $30,000 investment to the foundation because our investments were doing so well. We could kind of push the money over, but because of how that hits your budget, it does show up on the budget. And then 2 years ago, we were in the red when we put a bunch of money earmarked for workforce development. But that was also because the year before we had a good windfall when the convention went virtual. So,
Right.
We've been averaging.
And in both of those cases where we had the larger amounts, the money didn't really leave the organization. So, the budget on paper looked like we were in the red, but that money was just basically moved around and we used it some other place. Like we're currently using it, like the earmarked money for workforce development and some of those funds in all actuality, I mean, yes, on paper it was in the red, but really when you look at the overall picture, it didn't really go into the red.
Yeah, but even if we did transfer money from one account to the other, we lost liquidity, if you will.
Yeah.
But just like your household budget, there's things that you'll go into the red for that are important. Your child's education, maybe a honeymoon or a really nice vacation, or to buy that car, or whatever your family needs to be operational, but you hate to go into the red to keep the lights on. So, or to get groceries.
Well, and it's a good analogy because also as long as you can pay it back per se, it's not that big a deal. It's just a temporary loan. And in our case, we've been able to operate, again, over an 8-year period, we are in the black. So we are not running in the negative. We are moving in the right direction. And I think that's what we want to see, especially thinking long-term. It's long-term growth. And if there's a short-term investment to get there, that's okay. But having a plan to not be deficit year after year after year, and that's not where we're at. We're in a good spot.
Yeah, I mean, our goal has always been to have 1 year's operating budget in our coffers. The reason for that, if you go through a situation like a pandemic, we never foresaw that coming, but theoretically we could have lost, all of our members could have said, hey, I'm not working, I'm not renewing, and we still have a mission in the state of Indiana to advance surveying. So we could have held off not having any members for a year and still kept surveying going forward. Luckily, during that time, we had some board members that had the vision to write a letter to the governor and say, try to define surveying as critical. And the governor saw it that way. So we were able to keep everybody working. So that's what ISPLS does for you. Unfortunately, or I guess, kind of the way things are going today, we did have to have a slight dues increase. Your dues will go from $225 to $235. I think that probably keeps pace or under the pace of inflation.
Yeah, and I think, like we're talking about, we're wanting to keep us in the black going forward long term. And I think these gradual increases are a must because our expenses every year are going up with inflation. So, what we're spending on credit card fees, what we're spending on, events, our food budgets, those kind of things, they're all going up. So we gotta find a way to keep up with it. And, I feel like these small $10 increases are much better than us not increasing dues, and then 5 years from now, when we can't get in the black, we have to increase it $50 to get us there, or we are trying to cut other things that we want to do as a society to get us to the black. So I think it's important to gradually keep up with expenses.
Brian, how long have we stayed with 225? It's been we've been a few years without a dues increase.
We bumped it a little bit.
Was it last year?
I think last year. But before we did that, it had been at the same rate for over 10 years. I mean, it had been the same for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
Sign of the times, but I hope that our members see that we're doing valuable things with that money. I think we'll get into some of those valuable things, or we've mentioned some of those valuable things already with the funding of the Workforce Development Committee. They've been very active this year. So we're, and our lobbyist dues. Luckily, we've not had a huge increase in our lobbying dues for quite some time, but that's a very, very valuable expense. It's put us in a political position that we haven't, the years past before having a lobbyist, we were just not in a positive political environment. Speaking of which, I testified twice this summer to Senate.
Committees. Different committees in the government somewhere.
Yeah. The first one was for funding, an earmark funding for updating the INDOT CORS network. I think that's money well spent. That was only about $90,000, as if I recall. I believe they did get that funding.
I think so.
I can't say for certain, but hopefully the state, the legislators had responded very positively to our statements. Senator Doria was very helpful, being a part of that, and of course Mike O'Brien was there, our lobbyist, as we were testifying. So he's great at shaking hands and making sure that our voice is being heard. The second issue was I'd have to go back and look at the actual language, but there was some issue with flood certifications and using statewide aerial LiDAR data. There was, I'm sure, like it is there's one individual that really probably throws a monkey wrench and everything and says this state is no good. All of a sudden, the state is our state legislators are trying to find a way that I think they were putting a moratorium on using statewide LiDAR for funding or flooding determination for like 5 years or something like that. So I went down as a pseudo LiDAR expert, testified, explained to them that the accuracy of our statewide LiDAR is. I mean, I use it all the time. We see it about 0.2 of a foot. I use it mainly for research purposes, or investigating an area. We also use it with our mobile a lot. So I'll look at, did we get true vegetation penetration with our mobile system by comparing those two data sets together. So I have a very good feel on how good our statewide data is across the state. And they were able to, we were able to kill that language out of there. And again, Mike O'Brien was there with us. So I think that's money really, really well spent. So, the dues increase is what it is. But it's the cost of doing business to put surveying in a positive position in the state of Indiana.
And keep us fiscally sound for the years to come.
Exactly. We're getting a new logo.
Mm-hmm.
This would be the third logo that I recall. We had through, for the 90s for me, but I'm sure it was back through the 70s. We had a logo that was kind of looked like a roundabout with like four arrows pointing outward.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't really find any meaning. I'm sure there was a meaning behind that logo, but couldn't really find anything. I really like that logo. We did consider going back to that logo.
Mm-hmm.
We like our current logo, but the problem was the transit in the middle had very intricate details, which made it very, very complicated for embroidery gear, logo items. So we made the decision to go away from it. Brian, would you like to talk a little bit about the contest that was held and kind of what the results of that were?
We did open it up to ideas. We got, I want to say 6, 7, 8, 9 submissions. The reason I'm having problems with the exact number is we had multiple people submit multiple submissions, which makes the math a little harder there. But I think we had 9 submissions. We really appreciate everybody participating. We got some good feedback. We had some good stuff to look at. It probably made the board discussion a lot more difficult and complicated than I think that we thought it would be when we went down this path. And I don't feel like the final decision was easy. Not that we don't all agree, just that I think there were parts of different logos that we liked. But when push came to shove, what we decided on checked all the boxes, and the big boxes was being representative of Indiana, being representative of the profession, and having something that's simple enough that we can use it blown up huge, we can have it very small, we can have it on different surfaces like embroidery, but I know everyone we're talking to right now has a bunch of ISPLS gear that we've given.
Uh-oh. Did we just...
Some of those have been...
Yeah, we're losing them.
We're losing Brian.
Put it on.
All right. Go ahead. I think we got you back.
Okay.
All right. Sorry about that. Brian's virtual, if we didn't make that clear to start with. So.
No, I'm not sure where you lost me, but
it wasn't far back.
The big point is that it will work on all sizes and formats.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives us some good branding to represent us. And then I think the big push to make this change has everything to do with workforce development and having stuff that people recognize as the surveyors. Not as ISPLS, because frankly, the public doesn't know who ISPLS is, but we want them to know who the Indiana surveyors are and have them thinking about us, either young people as a career or just the public knowing who we are and what we do as a profession. So it'll really help with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, one of the drivers of this was the fact that we've purchased a trailer for the 3D sandbox that will tour around to schools and events. And we want to get that vinyl wrapped, as basically a billboard rolling down the road any time we take it somewhere. And we knew we had some issues with our logo from an embroidery standpoint, and that kind of pushed the idea of let's go ahead and make a switch. We have our logo winner here, so those could say it's an inside job, but
well, I'm sort of the logo winner. So the backstory is when we made the call, I reached out upstairs. We have a team of graphic designers here at American Structure Point, so I reached out to them upstairs and said, "Hey, do you have someone that could take a look at this, one of your graphic designers, and be willing to spend some time to come up with some ideas?" So I'd had one that I'd kind of put together roughly in CAD, and it wasn't completely clean or to a graphic designer's standard. So I sent her that idea, and then I sent her a couple of our other logos, that like the Young Surveyors logo, the one we're using on the convention items, some other past logos. I kind of sent her some information, some of what Brian was talking about of kind of what we're looking for. And she basically cleaned up my sketch, and then she provided 2 additional options. Mm-hmm. So I, other than giving her the input of what the history of some of the stuff was and what we were looking for, I had nothing to do with the logo that was actually chosen. Sure. So we ended up going with her option 2, which was completely done by her.
Yeah. So. And so to describe the logo, it's pretty simple. Mm-hmm. We have we can go either with a dark or light silhouette of the state of Indiana with a contrasting color. Maybe contrasting color is not the right word, but so like let's paint the picture of the first logo I see is a blue silhouette of the state of Indiana, mm-hmm. and then a white silhouette of a total station. It was pretty important that it be a nondescript total station. We didn't want to show favoritism to a particular brand. So I think it's a obviously being done by a design professional. I think it's pretty elegant. It's simple, and it stands out. So and that for me checks all the boxes. The only thing is hopefully people don't see it as a camera, but I think the handle on top makes it clear that it's a total station.
And it kind of has some resemblance to some of the newer like 3D scanners, so it can kind of look a little more like the modern equipment that way too.
Right.
And then it was very important too. We have the text next to the logo, and so it's in straight, horizontal text. It's not curved around the outside like it used to be, so it's very easy to read. And she made sure to make the land surveyors part of Indiana Society of Professional Land Surveyors bold, and it stands out.
Right.
So it's kind of it draws your eye right to land surveyors. So it's very obvious for somebody to see it and say, "Hey, they're land surveyors," and then they can look, "Oh, it's the Indiana Society of Professional Land Surveyors."
Yeah, and then also I think the basically the text being pseudo separate from the logo, you can do just the logo on some things, which would look pretty classy on a shirt with just that logo, or a T-shirt or something like that would look cool.
Yeah. So
we need to get some stickers made.
We do.
For the convention.
It's going to be very busy, I think, the last part of this year, getting everything rebranded and getting the logo out there. So it'll be good, though, I think.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing to mention is we aren't changing the color scheme, though. So some of our visuals will remain the same because we're still using the 2 blues, and we'll still integrate the yellow the gold color we use every now and then. So visually, it won't be like super. I mean, it's not going to be totally different. Everything everyone sees, when you pop up an email from us, it's going to look real similar because those colors are the same.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, was it early? Some last item for discussion is goal setting. When did we do that? Early summer, as I recall.
We did that I think we finalize it in March. We kind of started talking like February, March timeframe.
Okay, I may be completely off. So how long things have gone.
I think we had our big session in April, and then on our virtual call in May, we kind of narrowed it down. Because we left that April meeting, I believe, with, I want to say like 18 or 19 items. And then we ran a board survey to kind of narrow down what we were discussing, because 18 items would have taken a long time to go through, and we narrowed that down. So then when we had our call, we could really focus on which ones we wanted to hit right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm a big goal setting guy. I've loved it. I've participated in probably 4 or 5 ISPLS goal setting sessions. Some of them have been pretty bad. Some of them have been pretty good. The last one we had prior to this one was outstanding. That's where we identified a single goal of workforce development. We're all getting older. It's harder to find people in the profession. So we decided that workforce development in the first phase was going to be attracting people into the profession. Now, I understand we've gotten one is called outreach now, which I'm on the fence whether I'm okay with that. And the other is called workforce development, which would be developing your current individuals in the profession. I mean, that's something I think that ISPLS is already doing and has done. It's been a core mission of ours to educate surveyors. So, I mean, back to the discussion of goal setting. This goal setting was a little bit more non-exciting because it was very clear what the next step was. And the next step was educating our members. But there was a focus on targeting technicians in the profession, making our current technicians better. And that's a gray area that I think probably deserves some discussion. We've had some limited success on conventions where we've had technicians participate. I say limited success because it's never really been consistent. And it always seems to be focused on, how to calculate a curve and things like that. And I think those things are important, but they're not really get butts in seats kind of topics.
They're not exciting.
They're not exciting, right? Mm-hmm. So, this is something we've been talking about for quite some time. Last year's convention, I think, we had Gary Kent's session on Alta discussion that was kind of geared towards technicians, but it was really the hope was the LS would bring their technician in there and we'd talk about what to look for in the field. Well, Gary's such a great speaker and people ask him a lot of questions, so we got off on a lot of tangents, I feel like, and I don't know that we accomplished the mission during that session, but this year's convention is a little bit more, I would say, focused on a little bit more advanced technician. Yeah. Someone that maybe is like pre-SIT or SI is what they call it now, but or maybe not even someone that is going after licensure, but
they're not green.
They're not green, correct. So, but I think we do need to focus on the green surveyors or the new people in the profession. It's just a question of how. Yeah. And I can go into a group of technicians and say, this is how you should run your level circuit, or this is how you should run your traverse. And then they go back to their LS and the LS says, hell no, So I don't know how you combat some of those things. I think we need to have some discussions about from our members, what does technician training look to you? What does success look like to you? What does Structure Point do for internal training? Like, what do you guys, when you bring someone on, what's kind of the process you go through?
It's a lot of just on the job with the chiefs right now. It's one of those areas where we're looking at focusing on more, as probably most companies realize, especially in today's age with some one-man crews. We're a mix. We've got some one-man crews and we have some two-man crews. So we're a little bit of both, but it's just those short sessions of bringing them in, sitting them down, talking about a topic and moving on. And that's what I think, we talk some at the board. We've had some discussions on it and maybe trying to do some on-demand things and some stuff like that. But, I think it's those broad topics of items, things that come to mind to me are things like, the core like evidence, what we're looking for on evidence, and that's something that doesn't matter what company you look for or you work for or how you're doing things, you need to be looking for those fence lines. You need to understand that, they mean something. You need to understand that there could be stones there and what they mean, and, different items like that are kind of general and open to the whole public. I think those are things that we can focus on. And, there's some best practices with topo and GPS and some things that we can generally talk about. And I think that's where we need to try to focus,
Right.
I think even, we talked about, just simple things like balancing your back sights and foresights and some of that real basic stuff that, we might have learned in school, but you get a technician that's just starting out and they may not know that stuff. They haven't dealt with many traverses, so they don't understand the reasoning behind it. They're not running closures. They're just getting back sights and open topo a lot of times.
Yeah,
so.
Right. Yeah, and I think if I'm remembering right, when we had this discussion at goal setting, the topic became the why behind the how.
Yes, yeah.
Why is it important to balance foresights and backsights?
Yeah.
Why is it important not to go beyond 300 feet on a level circuit? Really explain to them maybe the science of measurements in some ways. I mean, I don't want to focus everything we do on measurement because there's certainly substantially more than what we do than that. But, we get a lot of people out there that think the magic measurement box gives you the right answer every time. And I think it's very, 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 very dangerous for our profession.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
if we can get a hold of that sooner rather than later, we just got to define what that looks like. And you've got an audience that, is busy during the day, probably have family commitments in the evening and weekends. So it's really tough to know what the delivery system is for something like that. And we're still figuring that out. But speaking of delivery system, I remember when we had this discussion or more recent discussions that we would start a Technician's Corner segment as part of this podcast.
Yeah.
So I think moving forward, it'll probably be a little earlier in the podcast, but we have no script for this. I'm kind of throwing it on you here at the 11th hour, but I think we should do it. So. That being said, welcome to the Hoosier Surveyor Podcast Technician Corner. I think our topic of discussion is the basic of the basic. You go into any surveying program, hopefully in the country and the world, and you're going to learn about this measuring technique. Do you remember the measuring technique we were discussing? Pacing, that's correct. Now, what is pacing?
It's using your steps,
natural steps
to figure out distances or to either measure a distance or to to figure out a distance.
Maybe a distance estimate is more accurate statement.
Yeah.
And I say natural pace. I can remember I grew up in farm country, and you'd watch a guy stepping off something, and they take these gigantic, unnatural steps, which are non-repeatable. But a natural gait, your natural walking gait, is very repeatable. Do you remember what your pace is and how you calculated your pace?
No, it's been a minute. And a lot of times it's been a long time. I know nowadays if I go out, because I don't know my exact, I kind of use the rough guess of about 2.5 feet per step. So, somewhere in that range is kind of my go-to, but no, I don't. It's been a while. since I've done that.
My pace, I was right. I was kind of figuring out, because I'm pretty sure my pace used to be, I say used to be, because I've gotten a little older and my step gait is not as long as it used to be, but 2.78 feet was my pace, which is 36 steps in 100 feet, 18 and 50, so on and so forth. And I remember the day that I hammered it down because we did it in class in school, and I'm like, when am I ever going to use this? And then you're going to stake out, and the party chief's saying 200 feet that way, and you would walk out 85 feet because you had no idea what 200 feet was, and turn and waste time. So one day we were staking centerline stakes for rough grading in a subdivision every 50 feet. And we'd set about, I don't know, a dozen of them. So on my way, it was the end of the day, on my way back to the truck, I just paced every 50 feet and I'd get 9 here and, 8.5 there. And I got it hammered down to that 36 steps in 100 feet. And that served me well throughout my field career. Probably I need to go back and do it. Because like I said, my step's not as good as it was. But where it was really efficient was, when you'd get that, 200 feet away to the next shot or to the next stakeout point, and you'd be within half a foot, And that was always a good feeling that you didn't have to waste a lot of time moving back and forth. I used to always use it too. I mean, I don't know what crews do today when it comes to like route survey, linear style topo. Yeah. We called it stationing the job. We would start with a can of paint, go every 50 feet, put a mark on the road, mark on the road, mark on the road. That way when you were taking your edge of pavement, top of the bank, toe of slope, you could make those all on seemingly the same cross section. Yeah. That would minimize brake line crossing and things like that. So it came very useful in that. You didn't have to worry about pulling tape. So pacing is extremely useful. So for the technicians out there that may not be using pacing, it's pretty easy. Take a 100-foot cloth tape in the parking lot, pull it out,
stretch it out,
and use your natural gait. I can't emphasize that enough to walk down from one end. And I would do that probably 10 times, come up with what your average is. And some people count every other step. Some people count. I've always been an every step kind of guy.
I was an every other. So,
yeah.
And I think the military taught me that.
Okay.
So, because it was important in the military, we'd learn the pacing for, like, we're doing land nav, where you've got a map and a compass, and you're trying to figure out where you're going.
So would you count your right or your left?
I would typically count my left, I believe.
Is that why they always go, your left, your left, your left, right, left?
It helps. So...
All right. Well, we should probably seek a sponsor for the Technician's Corner.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you want to sponsor the Technician Corner, reach out to me. So
yeah. So, I think we ought to talk maybe the next go around about the importance of leveling and leveling distances and balancing. I didn't do any research on this.
Pacing,
we certainly, this is all like common knowledge to surveyors, and maybe it's already common knowledge to technicians. If it is, write us at Ryan Swingley at ESPAssociates.com
there you go.
And tell us we're completely wrong. Otherwise, I think it's sound advice. It's sound for everyone to review, and I think I'm going to go outside right now and figure out my pace.
We should. We've been talking too. One thing that's on the discussions with the board is a Surveyor Olympics.
Oh, so it might be a good opportunity to brush up on that pacing.
You might want to brush up on it, because I think they're looking at next summer doing a Surveyor Olympics, and it's a good one to add to the Olympics. It's a good event there, is to pace out some distances and see how close we can get. So
that's a very nice segue.
It's always some fun competition too, to bet your buddy how close you can get, and put a beer or two on it. So.
Well, very cool. Well, we're coming to the end here. a lot of golf outings happened this summer. Vincennes University had their golf outing.
Yeah. We got some recording info. Stay tuned for that. It'll be coming soon too.
We're still trying to figure out the best segue into that, but we got some good interviews. A lot of stuff focused on Art and Bill, so we're pretty excited about that. One of the things we discussed at this golf outing was changing up the cocktail party situation, the VU alumni cocktail party at the convention. Brian, I don't know if you've heard any of this. This may be new to you, but the price of the cocktail party there at the convention has gotten pretty expensive, and we decided, with the location of the convention this year on the northeast side of Indianapolis, it was a good opportunity for another fundraising event for the program. So what we're doing is still, all the details are still in the works, but we're looking at a golf outing at Topgolf in Fishers that would include, we're not looking at completely free. We're looking at pairing up teams, 2-man teams, kind of like you would at a golf competition, and then, food and drink, at least some drink would be provided. Maybe some prizes at the end, but we're looking at it as, like I said, a kind of a fundraising opportunity for the program. Equipment's not getting any cheaper these days, so we need all the help we can get. So, with that, any ideas on some upcoming podcasts? We certainly ought to do a convention preview. I would think coming up fairly soon.
Yeah. We set the schedule today in our committee meeting, so that's something we can look at doing here very soon.
Yeah, so we're pretty excited about this conference. I think it's going to be a good one. Gary Kent is going to be back this year and for the next 2 years, I believe.
I think so.
And I'm happy to say that Dennis Moland is coming back. Dennis he lives in Arizona, Brian?
I believe that is correct.
Okay, so Dennis he's quite a character. He's very entertaining. He wrote a book on ethics. It's just really a series of stories, partially some his and partially ones I'm sure he heard word of mouth. I think Dennis worked for BLM at some point in time in his career, so he has a lot of federal lands experience and just an all-around interesting character. He took a little hiatus from the speaking circuit due to some family health issues, and he's back, and we're excited he's back.
For sure.
So, with that being said,
then we have some local. We've got a good number of local speakers this year too.
So we got some new ones, some guys returning that did some speaking last 2 conventions, and some new guys and some technical talks. Like I said, some of the tech, not necessarily, we haven't pulled anything out into technician level, but we encourage technicians to attend on Friday because there's some topics there that I think will be of interest to them, and we can go into that in greater detail when we do a convention preview. With that, anything else to add? Any discussion?
No, I think this is good recap of the busy summer we've had.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, with that, this is Ryan Swingley, Brian Selby, Brian Lewis, all saying, we hope your contracts are fruitful and they pay on time. This is Ryan Swingley with the Hoosier Surveyor Podcast saying, see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Hoosier Surveyor Podcast, brought to you by the Indiana Society of Professional Land Surveyors. For more information about the society, please visit ISPLS.org, or if you are new to the profession, you can find helpful resources at futureindianasurveyor.com.